Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're on broadcast in Australia and New Zealand with our colleagues in the Irish Business Network in New Zealand joining us today, as well as several representatives of some of the leading higher education institutions across both markets. We will have a bit of a Q&A today. Thank you for those who have already sent through your questions. We'll make sure that we do get to them all for you. But for those who haven't put questions through in advance, just so that we keep a little bit of order on things, we're not going to go live mics with everyone. What we're going to do is, if you could please use either the chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom interface. Just put in your questions there. I'll curate them and make sure that we cover them all. You do have anonymity here. So if you do put a question in, I won't call out who the question's from. We'll just ask the question in an anonymous term and go from there. Whenever we wrap up the discussion, we're also going to just have a quick few words from Brendan over in New Zealand, who's my opposite number over in the network there. We're also very pleased to see that we've got at least one ambassador on with us today, and members of the state agencies as well, from both a New Zealand government point of view and an Irish government point of view. Yeah, without further ado, we'll kick off. James, thanks for joining us today. I've had quite a bit to do with Digitary in a number of formats over the last few months. So I've been quite familiar about how the story is developed. But for those of us joining today who maybe are less familiar with the brand and the technology and what you do, talk to us about how you fit into the higher education conversation.
Great. Yeah, Digitary was actually founded in 2005 by Andy Dowling in Dublin. And interestingly enough, he worked in the university. He's actually a technical guy by training, and was lecturing within a university. And one of the things that he realized as, kind of back in that 2005, that view to sort of that paperless office, paperless environment, he saw that there was, a gap where you could actually issue credentials through a university electronically and securely. You could remove fraud, make it easy. But interestingly, he was kind of a bit ahead of his time, actually. And, traction in those early days was a little bit difficult. Universities can tend to be a little bit, slower towards that sort of digital kind of world. And so he likes to say that it was almost took 10 years to become an overnight success. And, I think technology kind of, and the market caught up with his idea. And, he had a lot of great success in working with some of the larger universities in Ireland, in the UK, and really just helping, those universities to issue all of their digital or documents, securely and online.
Okay. Before we jump into the sector, I've been in your office a few times, and it's normally a hive of activity, and that's obviously not the case. How are you guys adjusting to the remote working and a distributed workforce, and keeping that culture and teamwork going?
Yeah, look, it always is a challenge. I suppose where we were a bit lucky, being sort of more of a global organization, even if you just look at the time zone between Australia and Ireland, it never aligns, that well. And so we were kind of lucky that all of our staff were actually already set up for remote working, as most of us required to do calls maybe from home at night. And so in that way, a week before, I suppose, that official order to work from home, we made the decision to allow our staff to work from home immediately. And so, and that was just more for sort of a comfort sort of, as people got a little bit nervous. Look, there's definitely some, challenges there, as, schools and daycare closed, one of the things that we were really sort of, I suppose, attuned to was that, most of us are parents, and that we actually built in that flexibility to work around, children. At the moment, we're homeschooling, so there's a lot of sort of adjustments. So we allow people to work when they can, and most of the staff, they kind of know what they want to do. Some of the other challenges is when you work in an office environment, you've got that day-to-day interaction with people, and that cultural element is a really important part of people's day. We have some people that don't work in what I would call predefined teams, and so we wanted to make sure that there was definite check-ins with all of the team members to make people feel connected. And we do that through kind of, a bi-weekly stand-up where we just kind of interact. We have fortnightly virtual drinks on every second Friday. And look, we've run some kind of competitions, like a meme competition about the challenges of working from home. So we've tried to build in, kind of some of that social interaction, so that people feel still connected to the business.
Okay, so that's what's happening with you guys. Let's dive into the sector. We're going into Australia and New Zealand, two very different markets, and of equal standing and value, but while there's maybe not so much cooperation between the two around Bledisloe Cup time, whatever, right. Your experience has been very positive in terms of how things have gone. So what are you hearing in the sector?
Yeah, look, there's been definitely some challenges for, universities in Australia and New Zealand. And I'll start with Australia and New Zealand. The challenge of when, COVID-19, sort of hit, it was actually just before the start of the academic year. And so both Australia and New Zealand are strong destinations for international students. And so, both markets had international students who are already studying in the country, potentially, visiting family back home. You also had new students who were, kind of about to kick off the academic year. And once those travel bans came into play, a lot of international students were stranded, back in their home countries. And this put a really big challenge on institutions because, all these students are stranded, unable to start the academic year. And, the risk was you would have this massive cohort of international students who are going to miss a semester. And so, and this really set a challenge, which was for universities to look at how they could make courses available online to international students, and also look at ways to support students to make it back in time for the beginning of the academic year. And so, I think, one of the positives that's come out of this is, that push to enable students to access courses anywhere, I think is going to pay dividends in the long run as, students can, access courses remotely. This will open up opportunities for students who don't have the luxury of traveling. And so I think that there's definitely some, benefits that will come out of this. The other probably good benefit is governments in both Australia and New Zealand are looking at, kind of supporting those shorter courses as well in filling some skills gaps. In Australia, for example, the government is underpinning some short courses, especially around things like nursing, etc., to build up resources. And, we definitely see an opportunity again for digital micro-credentials, as a reward mechanism for there as well.
Okay, so talk to us about the products and how they've adapted to the changing environment in those markets.
Yeah, Look, as there's been a push to courses moving online, and also the reduction in that face-to-face interaction, what we have seen is, and probably, where we're a little bit more uniquely placed in this environment is that, where you think about how many businesses, products are not in demand, we find ourselves in a unique position where universities being able to issue digital credentials and students able to order credentials without going into the front of office. We've actually seen, a significant number of inquiries come through for universities looking to make that leap to digital. And so, if it's something that's come out of the crisis is almost like, that has created a need for that embracing of digital technology. And so, one of the things that we've tried to do is make it extremely easy for universities to be able to issue credentials digitally. And this is not just in Australia or New Zealand, but this is also Canada, in Ireland, is helping universities to get it set up quickly so as that they can issue digital credentials to their students. And so when students are ordering a copy of their credentials, especially if it's as a time of high unemployment, being able to give them access to digital copies if they can't actually physically go in and get access to their documents. And if you look at New Zealand, who has tighter lockdown laws than Australia, again, some of those universities are unable to sort of issue those documents easily.
Okay, so you've been involved in a project called My Equals, or My Equals, as someone told me yesterday. Talk me through that project. What role did you play? How has it been adopted?
Yeah, look, Digitary as a company was very much focused on Ireland and the UK. We'd been members of the Groningen Declaration Network for a number of years, and My Equals was actually a project born out of the Groningen Declaration. And what the Groningen Declaration is really about enabling student mobility. And so, My Equals as an initiative fell under that. And a big rarity in, I suppose, higher education is, for My Equals, you had the Australian publicly funded universities, you had the New Zealand publicly funded universities, and those two groups came together to put out an RFP for a single solution that would serve both Australia and New Zealand higher ed institutions. And so, and both markets, as we know, are, quite different, have their own nuances as well. And so for two groups to come together, agree on a solution and, take that to market, was a great thing. Look, Digitary was a bit of an underdog, when it came to it. We weren't a massive organization at that part, but, we were, blessed to win, that tender process, and we've chosen to deliver My Equals. And so, in over 18 months, we rolled out universities across Australia and New Zealand, taking into account things such as the different requirements across the different countries. And as of sort of 2018, that project was rolled out, and now we have, all those sort of 47 institutions issuing all of their digital documents through the My Equals platform.
All right, so it's full adoption now. It's not still in progress.
That's right. That's right. The rollout was complete, and now what we're doing and working with the team with My Equals is actually building on the functionality and the badges and micro credentials functionality that we've just launched in the last week is actually integrated into My Equals, and so that now participating universities on My Equals have the opportunity to also issue digital credentials through the platform. And then that allows the students to have not only their, say, degrees, in a My Equals wallet, but they'll also be able to earn badges and have those badges also sit in their My Equals wallet.
For those of us who are less familiar with the product, what do you mean by the light version, badges? What is
Right.
that?
Yeah, look, I'll talk my equals to start with. Universities can issue any of the digital, documents that they have, and that could be degrees, transcripts, etc., through the My Equals platform. The documents are cryptographically signed, and so that means they're tamper-proof to the student, and the student can then log in, access their credentials and share it with whoever they like. And students have the control to be able to not only choose who they share it, they can password protect it, they can set an expiry date, and then, share that, with employers to do additional study as well. And it just really gives them that power to, as I said, share their credentials and obviously, especially around employment. Badges and micro-credentials are something that have really taken off in the last few years. And really what a badge or a micro-credential, it's actually recognizing either things such as short courses, but also skills that they could have earned over whether or not through their degree, such as leadership could be a badge, for example. And badges can then easily be shared on platforms such as LinkedIn, etc. And again, it's just a recognition of a skill. And so again, thinking about, people wanting to stand out during the employment process, these are just things that can signal to the market that, you have certain skills that, are seen desirable by an employer. And as I said, we've integrated it with My Equals now. And again, so institutions can not only issue, their degrees, etc., but they can now issue badges for short courses and skills to their students as well.
Okay, a couple of questions coming through, if we can take a couple now. One from one of our university attendees. Approximately, I don't know, this will be an average. How much work goes into creating, managing, and distributing badges at the university end? So if university, for instance, adopted equals and badges, how much resource are they going to have to actually put in to getting the activity stood up and maintaining it?
Yeah, look, there's probably two things here. One is, for My Equals participants, it's actually relatively easy to set up badges. And so, we can set up a university in, well, actually the requirement on a university is only about a day. We like to say, we would like to set aside between 2 and 5 days. And the reason for that is it's easy just to turn on badges, but we like to try to understand what are they hoping to achieve? What is the strategy that sits behind badges and micro-credentials? And so we offer to run some workshops within the universities, not only to understand, the differing needs maybe between, what the market is looking for in Australia versus New Zealand, but also the nuances of within the institution as well. And so we would like to run a few workshops and potentially tailor the solution to better meet the needs of the wider university. So are there differences between postgrad and undergrad, or even amongst the faculty and even across, issuing on the skills base. So as I said, 2 to 5 days allows us to build in some of that greater understanding of the strategy that we want to sit behind that.
And what about the ongoing maintenance?
Ongoing, it's quite simple to for the institution to issue badges. We obviously help them to create the badge templates, etc. But it's almost the same as issuing a document. You upload the image, you put the different details around the badges, and then you can issue those badges to students. So the ongoing is really dependent on how many badges the university wants to issue.
Okay. Another question around the badges, and very elegantly referred to as a cryptographic system. Is that tied into blockchain that we hear about in terms of cryptocurrencies and whatever? Is it the same sort of principle?
Blockchain is another bigger discussion, and blockchain is quite topical at the moment, and digital credentials is seen as one of the key use cases for blockchain. And so look, the cryptographically signed, just to address, is actually signing, either a PDF or, with underlying data that doesn't sit on the blockchain, but it's about creating a signed copy, and the copy is a signed document, and that document is signed by the university. And if you try to tamper with the document, it breaks the signature, and so then anybody who receives the document knows that that document has been tampered with. So that's separate from the blockchain. But one of the things that, and Digitary is investigating this ourselves, and, we're running, we're part of what's called IBNNZ, a company who has kind of their own sort of blockchain. We're running some sort of internal trials around self-sovereign identity. But what a blockchain does is, if you issue a document to the blockchain, you're basically giving the power to the student to own their document and share their document, as they see fit. And so, there's obviously some challenges involved in that. Giving a student power, you're giving them the keys. If they lose that key, they could potentially lose that document. But we see that blockchain is a broader part of the discussion around digital credentials. And we see the importance of being able to enable students to link their credentials to the blockchain and giving them more power to, and then, helping universities down that pathway to incorporate blockchain into how they do business. And
okay, what conversations have you been party to around the higher education sector adjusting to the world of work? I mean, I think everything we knew about the world of work 6 months ago is probably turned on its head for a lot of us at the minute. But there was a lot of talk about universities producing students who were more workplace ready and, greater links to employers and whatever. So where do you see that going?
Yeah, look, it definitely is a completely different world now. Look, employability outcomes have always been extremely important for universities, and not only readying graduates for the workplace, but also making sure that the skills gained for over the life of their degree are skills that are looked at by, or seen as important for employers. And so, look, I see kind of, the post COVID-19 type thing is, we're going to see a lot more people out of work, right? And so, I see there's kind of almost two sides. So there's the applicant side, and, applicants are really going to need to look at how can they stand out, right? So, if there is, high unemployment, how are they going to stand out? What do they need to stand out? And so, and again, this is where some of the badges and micro-credential stuff becomes quite important, because you want to be able to demonstrate that you have certain skill sets, and universities can help those applicants stand out, through the short courses, etc. The flip side is, and this is where there's going to be a significant higher pressure on the hiring manager, because I think you'll find now that, with so many people unemployed, there's going to be a lot more people actually applying for jobs, and there's going to be a lot more resumes that they need to shift through. And, they're going to be looking at ways to better verify the people coming in. And so the real world example is, being able to verify that an applicant has the qualifications that they say they have, have the skills that they're looking for. And so the more a student or an applicant can demonstrate that, the easier it makes on the hiring manager. And so, we're seeing, short courses becoming more and more important. Over the last, few years, we've seen, the MOOCs take off, like Coursera, etc., where people can go in and do, small courses, get issued a badge, etc., to supplement not only their university degrees, etc., as well. And, we talk about lifelong learning, and lifelong learning goes to those employability outcomes.
Okay, so realistically, the higher education institutes who are on on this platform can give their students going out into the workplace a competitive advantage in a different market where they reduce the friction in the application process for them.
Correct. And, one of the things that we're starting to do is work with employment marketplaces on integrating the ability for applicants to verify their credentials through the job application process. And, it's one of the things that we've been working with the My Equals team on as well, is how do we better enable a student to be able to easily verify their credentials as part of that application process. And you're absolutely right. It's about removing that friction, but then, employers have that, almost that surety that the applicant who says they've got a Bachelor of Business has a Bachelor of Business. If one of the, and then again, skills-based stuff like leadership, etc., again, being able to demonstrate that, is, extremely valuable.
Okay. Couple of questions from the audience, if we can. For higher education providers who are multi-site, we've seen a lot of universities who, are maybe operating outside their home country as well. Where does your platform give them the advantage in those different markets?
Yeah, one of the things that we've worked on, and there's a couple of things here, is we started to build up a network of receiving organizations. So, and what that means is it's a simple kind of through the student portal, a student can easily share their credentials with any of our receiving organizations across the world. And when we continue to build up a larger network, and we offer our receiver org portals for free to anybody who wants to sign up. And so a student can then select an institution from a drop-down and actually share their documents directly with that institution. We continue to build out, our partnerships throughout the world. But the other thing that we've looked at is different countries like the US have different standards. And so one of the things that, we've been a part of in the US is an EdXchange program. And that program is about creating a standard where institution can actually share documents with each other. And our platform will actually do the conversion of, credentials into that format that allows, it to easily be shared with all of the institutions across the US. So, and then, obviously there's different standards in Europe. And so, we're working on, that transformation. And so any of the documents that come into our platform can then be transformed into a large number of different international standards that make it so much easier for institutions in different regions to pick up those documents.
Okay, so it's really building a capability of those businesses, because at the end of the day, higher education providers are, businesses as well. So they're able to collaborate in new markets with confidence based on the platform, which came out of Dublin. That's
right.
Yeah. Story.
And as we know, look, students, are highly mobile, and a significant number of Australian and New Zealand students study internationally, and vice versa. A lot of international students come here, and that student mobility side that I mentioned around the Groningen Declaration Network that we're a signatory of is something that we truly believe in, and enabling students to study wherever they want.
Okay. I know we're coming up on close to time. There are another couple of questions that came through. One was, do you see variation in usage of the products between Australia and New Zealand, and equally so regional versus metropolitan institutions?
We do see, differences, and it's more a difference between institution versus institution. Some have, tentatively adopted the solution and, will issue, degrees, but we've seen other institutions who, issue letter of offers through our platform, all degrees, all results, etc. So, some have been slower to sort of, I suppose, embrace the capabilities of the platform. We do see some of the regional institutions have actually taken it up a little bit in greater numbers than other universities, but again, depending on the capability there as well.
Okay. And one final question we've had through, data privacy. How do you manage that? For example, Australian university data being held on Australian servers and things like that. What are you doing around that?
Yeah, look, privacy is really at the center of what we do. Being obviously an Irish-based company, we went through the whole GDPR compliance. We're GDPR compliant, and then that filters down to every market. We make sure that we're capturing the individual privacy, not only concerns, but legislation of any of the markets that we work in. And we make sure that data is completely segmented. Obviously, different countries have different requirements of having all of the data stored locally. We use AWS that allows us that capability to host the data in the country that it's needs to be. And the final part that we've tried to build into everything that we do, and we did this with the recent EdXchange, data exchange, is making sure that we're building in consent and user consent into how the data is then shared. So we always try to put that power into the user, and so the user is in complete control with who they share, their private data, etc. Okay.
We will wrap at that point. We're going to invite Brendan O'Connell from IBNNZ to say a few words of thanks as well. But just before we do, I know we've got a lot of higher education institutions on in both New Zealand and Australia. This time next week, we'll have a session with Taxback International, who operate in both markets, another fantastic Irish fintech as opposed to edtech. But they've literally just had hundreds of thousands of dollars to one of the leading Australian universities by way of tax refunds that their product was able to unlock. So I suspect that a few of our higher education guests today may want to tune in for that one as well. But look, without further ado, I'll hand across to Brendan for a few.
Lovely. Thank you, Barry, and yep, thank you, James. That's a really fascinating session, and I guess we're very conscious of all the businesses that are being significantly impacted by current scenarios, and it's great to hear the success that some businesses can find in these type of times. I guess there's a real acceleration of what it means to be doing remote working and what it means now to be doing learning online. So great to hear the success story of Digitary. I think here in New Zealand, we've been very aware of the NZQA support for micro-credentials, and I look at the list of universities here in New Zealand that are using MyEquals, and they'd be all the familiar names. To your point, I can see how different organizations are using it. I see Otago being a massive adopter, and look at some of the industry training organizations here, the Primary ITO and the like. So it's great to know there's an Irish company behind that. Great to hear the story as well about the I guess some of the lessons that might have been learned in Ireland around GDPR and how that sort of regulatory environment sort of accelerates an Irish advantage, and really and big story. Thanks for your time, James. I know the Irish Business Network here we'll be keen to learn more and help you in any way as things expand in New Zealand. And thanks, Barry, for the collaboration with the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce. It's a great partnership that's starting. I look forward to seeing a lot more coming out of it. So great session today, guys. Look forward to more. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.